Okay, so again, this is going to be open. Do feel free, although it's being recorded, to ask questions, because this is meant to be an interactive class on relationships. By the way, you can start with a question right now if you want. Otherwise, I can talk for like 9 hours on this. Any general questions we have, or should we jump straight in?
9 hours.
Okay, let's go. One of the challenges I have with a lot of people, and I speak about this a lot, is watching out for abusive people. Watching out for abusive people. How do you know if the person you're dating is going to be a bad husband? And, with all due respect to you all here, how do you know if the man is dealing with a woman who is... I have a lot to say on this. There are no general answers to this question, but I'll give you some anyway. One thing I found is that, first of all, not every red flag is a reason to break up. Okay? People are looking for red flags. Not every time it's a red flag. Some red flags you can live with. Depends on the size, depends on you, and depends how the relationship is with this. Terrible in-laws. Is that a reason not to marry this person? Depends on the person, depends on the in-laws, depends what the challenges are. There's a lot to this, and you've got to try to figure out exactly how you're going to cope, or if you're able to cope with this challenge in the first place. However, I would say 99% of the people I know who are deep into relationships or marriages with an abusive person, most of them, okay, maybe not 99%, but definitely 90 to 95% tell me that while they were dating or engaged, they saw signs. They always saw signs. They saw things that weren't right, and they covered them over because they were afraid to bring it up, afraid to break off the relationship, scared to go through being single again. But you'll always, if you're honest to yourself and ideally honest to somebody else, you'll be able to pick up on things, and they should be spoken about. And and I always say to people, I just told a couple who were here before, not every conversation is comfortable. There are some conversations that are uncomfortable, and some people are just too agreeable. And being agreeable is a good trait, but sometimes you could be too agreeable. Sometimes you have to stand up and be like, well, I don't like that. I don't like the way you're talking to me. I don't think this is going to be good for my future. And you can be disagreeable. Is that a word? Mm-hmm. It is now. Okay, so this is important. So let's talk for a little bit, and then any questions you have on anything else, I'll be able to, I don't care. These classes are open. I'm willing to go into areas that, but there's certain things you can look out for. So let's double click on this for a couple of moments and see where we go. One of the first things I see are people are very controlling and possessive. You're entitled to your independence. You don't need to tell your boyfriend or even your fiance where you are all the time. Okay? You can tell them as much as you want, but some people demand to know everything about you and wherever you're going to be and wherever you are. Normal people will want to spend time with you, but they know the difference between you and them. There's a gap, and that gap is good. We call this gap a boundary. It's a boundary, and it's a healthy thing. Even in marriage, is a healthy thing. I am married, Baruch Hashem, 21 years. Do not ask me how. My wife is either insane or it's a tzedeket, a righteous woman. It's the latter, not the former. But there's boundaries. There's boundaries. You don't need to tell your spouse everything. You don't need to be on them all the time. Same is true for children, by the way. Right? This helicopter parenting thing, which has become like just give people a chance to be themselves, to make their own mistakes. And I'm the first one to blame. As soon as my kids get upset or start crying, I'm like, hey, take whatever you want. It's not good parenting. One of the best things you could tell someone is no. It's very healthy. It's a boundary. Okay. So this controlling and possessiveness, people can hide it for 2-3 dates. then afterwards you get to see it. It always comes out eventually. And some people are very, very narcissistic. That means it's all about them. And you have a life, it doesn't interest me so much. I don't want to know how your day was. I wanted to know what I need. Because your interests are your interests, and I'm not interested in them. But you need to know about me, right? And people think, wow, it's just strong personality. I want a strong person in my life. But where are you in this whole thing? Where do you find yourself? The question is, are you able to be married to a narcissistic person? And the answer is, yeah. People can be married to terrible individuals, some of them for a long time. People can sit in prison and be okay with it and actually be afraid to leave, you know? I'll give you one little Devar Torah because I'm a rabbi and this is a shiur. You know, Hashem wants us to be free. Hashem wants us to have freedom. We know, for example, there's something called an Eved Ivri. What's an Eved Ivri? A Hebrew, I use the word slave, but it's not slave. It's a person who's a worker, an indentured servant, who, for whatever reason, has lost their independence, usually from financial reasons, and has to find a family to adopt them. Because there's no prison system. In real Judaism, there's no prison system. There is a strong rehabilitation. There is capital crime. There is death penalty, which was very rarely used. The Mishnah tells us, anyone know, how often a bet din was permitted to kill somebody? Every 70 years, the Mishnah and Gemara and Sanhedrin tells us. If a bet din killed more than one person every 70 years, it's a murderous bet din. So we want people to live. We don't bring people up in order to kill them, but we want to rehabilitate them. And the best way to do that is to find a family who's going to adopt them. Now, when that family adopts them, they're responsible for that family. And that family is responsible to them. Let's say, after 7 years, which is the period of time that they should remain with that family before they can figure out their life. That's a cycle. 7 years is a cycle, right? We have 7 days of the week, 7 notes in a musical scale, right? 7 years that a person should be living with another family, taking care of them. And then after 7 years, that's the cycle, you got to get out. What happens? They turn around and be like, I don't want to leave. This family, they adopted me, they're good to me. Are we happy with that or not happy with that? Does Hashem like that or does Hashem not like that? Is that a good thing or not a good thing? What do we do to them? We say you should leave. I want to stay. You want to stay? Or you want to remain with this family and not create your own family and your own life? They take a thing, they put an earring right on the door, the mezuzah, because this ear should have listened very carefully at Har Sinai that said, you need to be free. Freedom is a key component to spirituality. We could talk about freedom a long time, but I want to just keep our topic today. People need to be free, need to make their own choices.
Question.
Yeah.
What if a person's parents are the reasons why they're not free?
You mean psychologically?
Like both. Saying, what if a person's parents are the reasons why they're not free?
You mean they keep you trapped? This is a classic question and a fascinating one, and it relates very, very much to this, by the way. I'm dealing now with 2 couples, actually, who the husband is more devoted to his parents than his wife and kids. I say more devoted. And that's a mistake. And I tell the boys this. Your priority is your wife. You can respect your parents, and you should. But the mitzvah of kibbud avim actually changes when you get married. And I have more problem with men than women. Women seem to naturally understand this, and I find men are still attached to the umbilical cord, and it takes time, which is probably why the Torah itself predicts this. The Torah, and says that a man has to tazov et Aviv Imo has to leave his parents. It doesn't tell a woman to do that because women naturally, instinctively know, enough of them, I got to create my own family now. Since you mentioned, I'm going to talk about it though. Let's say a young girl or boy wants to marry someone, which they're allowed to Jewishly, a Jewish boy or girl, and the parents say, no, you're not allowed to marry them. We disapprove. Are you allowed to marry this boy or girl? Your parents say, over my dead body, you're not marrying this boy or girl. Not because of, against Torah things. They're not like, According to the Torah, you can marry them. But your parents say no. Are you allowed to defy your parents and marry them? It's a very famous question. What's the answer?
Based on what you just said, I would say yes.
Yes to what?
So you're allowed to marry them.
You are allowed to marry them. You are allowed to marry them. But it depends. Because that's a classic example of the Torah says you're allowed to, but should you is another question altogether. That's something else. Hi, welcome. That's something else. Whenever people come late to class, I used to come late all the time. I always try to welcome people so I don't feel too uncomfortable. Walk into class late, like, all right. So should you? That's something else. Interestingly, I must tell you, since you mentioned it, and it's come to my head, who do we learn out the laws of Kibbud Av V'em from in the Gemara? Anyone know? There's one boy we learn out from Kibbud. Very unusual, very weird. Anyone know his name? Nope. Although Esau was very good at Kibbud Av V'em, actually, you're absolutely right. He was good at it, but he was doing it as a form of trickery in order to get what he needed. And even then he had schut for it. Yaakov was scared of Esav because he knew Esav was good at honoring his parents. That is absolutely true. But he had ulterior motives. No, this person really did honor his parents, incredibly. But he wasn't Jewish. The Gemara usually, you want to find examples of how to do mitzvot? Find a good Jew, right? Find yourself an Shlomo, right? Find yourself a Shoshana, right? Find yourself a Kimba, and boom, you know what to do. And we find someone called Dama ben Netina, or Dam ben Nesina. I'm not too sure if it was Ashkenaz or Sephardi. Kidding, it was before there was such a division. He was a non-Jew. His parents were extremely insane people and very abusive. Extremely abusive. The famous story that the rabbis wanted to buy a jewel and his father had the key under his pillow. He wouldn't wake his father up in order to take the key and he could have made a lot of money. Remember that story? You heard that story before, I'm sure. He's a non-Jewish boy. By the way, why didn't you wake up your father? Imagine if Valley came home and your father could make millions of dollars of profit. Right? And you're like, I don't want to wake you up. He's like, you're crazy?
Are you allowed to wake him up or not?
If you think he wants to be woken up, you can. He didn't wake him up because his father was crazy. He would have probably killed him. That's the reason why. And he still respected him. That's the secret behind the story. That's the rest of the story you don't hear. Most commentators say his parents were completely majnun. They were complete divonair. I'll give you an up-to-date version of this boy, actually. This is an up-to-date. The Gemara gives a different version of it, but I'll give you the modern-day version. Imagine you have a young boy who's kicked out of their home as a young boy. His parents say, get out, we don't want you in the house. And he goes to high school, and he works his way through high school. Sleeping on friends' couches, maybe an aunt, maybe a relative. And then he graduates high school, top of his class, and gets to a great school, goes to Harvard. Nothing from his parents. They don't come to the graduation. Hitchy, nothing at all. And then he graduates Harvard Law School, top of his class. And he gets the top job at the top law firm, making a big salary. Nothing from his parents. So he's been to Harvard, he's been to Harvard Law School, he's got the best job. Eventually, he gets married, has kids. And then he gets elected to Supreme Court of America, the highest legal position probably in the whole country, if not the world. He's about to be sworn in. He's 60 years old. Millions of people are watching, billions if not. Suddenly the doors swing open. As he's about to be sworn in, the proudest moment of his life, his mother and father walk in. His mother walks over. She spits in his face. and says, you were a bum and you're still a bum. And she walks away. And as she walks away, he leans over and picks up a glove that she dropped on the way out and says, oh, Imma, here's your glove. That's the level of kibbud avayim a person is meant to have. Can you imagine? Do you know how difficult that mitzvah really is? You know, you're not allowed to even contradict your parents. And yet when it comes to marriage, it's your decision. That shows you, thinking about it now, what a big decision getting married. They can even override your parents' wishes. Think about it. Now, if someone tells me my parents are against an individual, I'm not quick to say, ignore them and get married anyway. Okay, let's see. What is their problem? Right? Do you have a good relationship with them? Are they seeing something you're not seeing? In most cases, they are. In most cases, they are. Or it could be they're just uncomfortable and they thought it'd get something better for you. But at some point, you have a guy or girl who's getting on in age and the parents have an ideal of what they think you should marry. And you're like, it's just not happening because they're out of touch with what's happening in the dating world today. It's your life. You're allowed to marry that person, even against their wishes. I think you know what I'm talking about. It reaches the point. Okay. So that's the short answer to your question. But there's big halakhic implications. But then there's real life, and in real life, you want your parents there. I've only once, not a wedding that I did. I do weddings of people who come from divorced families, and I work very, very, very hard to try to make sure that both sides, and I know I've done weddings of couples where the parents haven't spoken since they divorced, and anything they have between them goes through lawyers and fighting and money, and I say, it's not about you, it's their wedding day, and we're going to work, and I speak to both of them beforehand, and I prep them, and I say, stay away from each other, you take photos, you smile, and you go back to your corner. Are you being selfish? It's not your day. There was one wedding where the mother would not come if the father was there. Imagine that? Imagine your own mother not coming to your wedding. But the girl said, it's my father, he has to be there, I can't not invite him. I said, if that's your mother's decision, it's a decision, you're getting married. And if you need your father, you need your father over there. But that's unusual. Usually me personally, I bend over backwards to make sure that both sides are there. Yeah. Do they fight afterwards? I don't know, I'm out of there. But at that point, when it happens, that's what's going on. Yeah. Any other questions on anything we said so far? You know, Esther, I must mention, Esther Malka was successful in her mission, Queen Esther, because she was an orphan. And I remember reading a Chazal, and maybe in the Mam Loez, but someone definitely says this. I'm not making it up. The reason she was so successful is because she didn't fail in Kibbud Avayim because she had no parents. So all the problems of honoring your mother and father were shunted away. So she was able to be successful. Isn't that crazy? Imagine that. That's how easy it is to mess up when it comes to parents.
Sorry, can I ask another question? What if it comes to things that aren't related to marriage? Let's say, like, for example, like pursuing a career.
When it comes to parnasah, it comes to making a living, and it comes to marriage, you can make your own decision. Having said that, they probably paid for college, so you better work hard and get them on board. But it's your decision. This is your life, and you're allowed to make your own life. But once again, most parents have a good idea of their kids and only want the best for you. But again, it could be they're out of touch. It could be. My mother wanted me to work in my father's business, you know? And I decided I'll become a professional dancer. Oh, that was an earlier career. A rabbi, which was a later life decision. Okay, it's your life, you've made the decision. Now, marrying someone with controlling parents, that's a much bigger problem. That's a bigger problem. Because when you marry someone, you're marrying their parents as well. And I mentioned this before, This is the woman that you're going to call Ima, Mummy, Mother for the rest of your life, or the rest of their life. Right? So you better think long and hard about this. Yeah. Absolutely. So you're looking for someone who can empathize, who can understand you. Okay? Someone who's emotionally intimate. This gap between the previous generation and our generation is very, very big. It's actually a sign of Mashiach, which is another topic now for now, but I'm seeing a big, big gap between our parents' generation, where I'm going to talk open to you right now. This is the way it is, and the man around the home, and this is the opinion, everyone takes it, everyone goes with it, right? It's a cultural thing, and it's an ethnic thing, and I'll be honest, that worked for their generation, possibly, but in our generation, we'll be having more of a voice. I'm seeing it. And it's a good thing, but it's not an easy one to maneuver. You know, I know my grandfather's house. I got to see my grandfather a little bit and my grandmother more, but it was his way or the highway. This is the way it was. And the women succumbed. I'm just telling you, that's the way it was. And now things have changed. You know, education has become a lot more, even my years at teaching university. When I started, I had very few Sephardi women in my classes. Very few. When I first started 20 years ago, I had 2 or 3. Now, what is it? I mean, even knew that. Well, half the class, right? It's changed. It's a different world, you know? And my daughters, they're all getting full educations and careers. I'm not trusting any man to support my daughter for the rest of her life. He's able to, B'ezrat Hashem, lovely. But I ain't relying on that. Not 2021. My daughter's about to start her master's in social work. Oh yeah. I can tell you horror stories. The hair on the back of your neck will stand up about women who come from wealthy, married men who became very wealthy when they were married, and the men get rid of them for a younger version. Excuse me for saying it, but it's the truth. You're adults, you can handle it. And it's become a big problem. And they're left with nothing, no education, nothing at all. I was actually just talking to someone actually on Sunday about this. A woman, a very successful woman actually, who is divorced. Actually, she was the main breadwinner, ironically, while she was married. He's the one who's left with nothing. But the opposite's true. Are you with me? Is this too heavy for you? I can do more fun stuff if you want. I can give you a reality check. You know, I say, what was the greatest gift that Britain gave to America besides me? Simon? Who? Cowell. All the Americans are like, oh, I can sing so well and I can dance. And he's like, no, you stink. You should do this as a hobby, but don't even try to do this as a career, because you are really. And everyone's like, he's so mean. He's not mean. He's been great. He's saving you a lot of time and money. I think I mentioned this before, right? Yeah, I think I did, yeah. Sorry, you had a question.
Do you think there's a difference between, I mean, there is a difference between the two, but do you think women, like Jewish women who are religious and like want to have kids and like go down that like path, do you think it's a bad thing for them to be like focusing on a career rather than a job? Because like, I understand like in this world, like you need to make money to support your family, and there's always that, but like, I don't know, like I feel like I struggle with the idea of like going down a career path, because I feel like that often can take away from your like home duties.
It does. It is.
Like
It.
a man.
Listen, it's different for everyone, and depends where you are in life and what you're dealing with, and you may not have to do it straight away. But no is the answer. I believe that finding a career, a skill, or a career. I mean, I know women who start their own companies. That's also, but they need to have a skill or a career path. And just having some job, you're taking a risk. That's all I'm saying. It's a security, it's an insurance. You know?
Dowry.
Really, it's things have changed. Again, in the general world and general Jewish world, it's a given, right? I think they're overdoing it, right? They don't even think about marriage relationships till they're established in their careers. That's not what I'm talking about. That's already, I'm dealing with girls in the mid-30s who are just waking up to getting married, right? So that's too much. The pendulum has swung, in my opinion, too much in that direction. And it's not PC to say it, but I believe it to be true. Having said that, having some skill or some career, and do it slowly. It's online. Everything's online nowadays. Probably become a surgeon online. I'm kidding. Don't, please. Right? But you can figure it out, but you need something. You need something. God willing, everyone will get married, B'ezrat Hashem, and stay married for many happy years and work it together. But listen, it's a level of emunah. There was a big question asked Rav Moshe Feinstein. Should you take out life insurance? This is a question. When it first came very popular, I don't know when this happened. Came out, take out life insurance. I asked him, and he said, depends on the person, but for 99% of the people, yeah. But God will protect me, and God will give me the money I need. Others, so I'm like, okay, maybe there's 1% of the population who can live with that level of faith. Then it's going to work out great, and I'm going to die at a ripe old age. But for most people, they don't have that, and therefore you should. And at this point, it's a mitzvah, an obligation, chiyuv, to protect your family.
But you're saying like a job is less secure compared to like.
Listen, nothing is secure. I know people who have careers, lawyers and doctors who end up with nothing at all. People who can't, literally the stupidest people I know sometimes become millionaires. So it's all in Hashem's hands. I'm talking about the hishtadlut you have to take. The amount of effort you should put in. And the effort says you should find a career path and do hishtadlut. That's what I'm saying. Is it a guarantee? There's no guarantees. People can have amazing careers and then you've seen it. It all falls apart. But you have to put your hishtadlut. And I'm talking about my oldest daughter right now. She got her bachelor's and now straight in for a master's. Yeah. Anything else? I'll just keep on talking otherwise. Questions, thoughts, comments? Lying in a relationship. Lying. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before because I speak a lot to a lot of people, but you don't need to tell, listen to this important distinction, every truth to your husband or wife, or even your children, but you should try not to lie. Okay? So there's a difference. What's the difference over here? All right? So your husband or wife says, tell me about your ex-boyfriends or girlfriends. You shouldn't lie and be like, me? You're the only person I've ever loved in my entire life. That's called a lie. Although lying, by the way, happens to be, in Judaism, a very different definition to the general accepted view of lying in general. But I'll leave that for a second. You don't need to tell every truth. Your kids don't need to know, so where were you tonight? I was out. Don't need to know where you went, who you were with. No. You should try not to lie to them, but you don't have to tell them every truth. If you see the person you're with lying to you about a lot of things, though, that's a problem. That's a problem. Now, lying is permitted. I just want to give you the halachic definition of lying, because it's a very interesting one, just for a minute. Sheker. How you understand lying in general. And this is we actually learn, I don't know where we learn out that lying isn't what you think it is in the Torah. There's a story in the Torah. Anybody know? Abraham and Sarah. You know the story? Abraham and Sarah. Sarah said something about Avraham Avinu, which wasn't so terrible, but wasn't so complimentary. And when Hashem repeats the story to Avraham, he left that piece out. As it were, Hashem lied. Sounds unusual, right? Says a great rabbi who lived before and after the war, Rabbi Dessler, he says lying isn't always what happened and what didn't happen, truth or false. You can lie for Shalom Bayit. If you know what you're going to say is going to make a relationship bad, then you can lie. But it's not true, I understand. But the truth is, I need to keep Shalom Bayit. And that's a greater truth in my life. And therefore, you are allowed to say things, I mean, they call it a white lie in English. I don't know what that even means. But you're allowed to say things in order to keep Shalom Bayit. So if you know you did something which is going to cause a big fight in your home, and there's no good that's going to come out of you telling your husband, you're telling your wife, then keep your mouth shut. Or you can bend the truth in order to keep. Because truth should bring you closer to other people, and falsehood should not be allowed to make a distance between you, which we learn from Avram, Sarah, and Hashem. Yeah.
Is there like a risk in losing trust in a relationship if like you open the door to like lying for Shalom Bayit? Because like it's very hard to know like, oh, this is actually going to be Shalom Bayit, or like I don't want to deal with the consequences of having this conversation, so like I'm just
It's a
gonna-
fine, you're asking a very, very good question. How far does this go? So you know what? I'll lie about everything and have great Shalom Bayit. I'll steal money. I'll have a few other wives on the side. I won't tell her we have Shalom Bayit. So obviously it's not what we're talking about. Obviously there's got to be a gvul. There's got to be and you need to discuss it with a halachic professional, a rabbi, to figure out exactly when and where. But sometimes it comes out of common sense. You got to make a on-the-point decision. And if you know this is going to lead to an explosion, then keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. But Shalom Bayit trumps a lot of things. Can I tell you a story? I just told you Monday night. I just read the story recently. It just happened recently. And then watch, I actually recorded this. I'm going to tell the story again. It's a great, great story. It's going to take me like 5 minutes to get through, but trust me, you're going to love the story. There's a lot of parts to which each part is amazing. There's a rabbi who lives in Tel Aviv who every Friday goes to different communities to help answer questions every Friday morning. He takes a taxi, and on the taxi ride over there, he would study and prepare. He was in the taxi with a taxi driver who had the radio on, and he's about to tell him to turn it off, but it was like talk radio kind of thing. And a guy comes on and says, I must tell you a story that happened to me about a great man called Moshe Mendel of Lelov. Not Moshe Mendel, Moshe Mordechai of Lelov, a rabbi. So he's like, don't turn it off, I want to hear the story. This is the story. So he says, I'll tell you what happened. I was a young boy, and we used to go every Friday night to his tish, to his table, sit, he would have all the Hasidim come, and we would sing and eat. One Friday night, a man walked in who I'd never seen before. I'd never seen this man before. And he walked in. And as soon as he walked in, the Rebbe, who never does this, waved him over. And he never does that. He always sits in his own world. People would approach him, but no one, he would never wave someone over. And he waved this man who I'd never seen before. And I saw him whisper something into this man's ear, and the man got shocked and ran out. And the man on the radio said, we were young, I was there with my friends, we said, who the heck? Let's follow this guy. We've got to find out what that was about. What the heck was that? So unusual. So we followed them outside. And we chased him down and we stopped him. And we said, what was that about? He never calls people over, and you seemed so shocked, and he whispered in your ear and you ran out. And he said, I got to get home. He's like, you cannot go, you got to tell us what's happening. He says, I'm going to tell you only because you're going to realize what a great man your Rebbe is. He says, every Friday night, me and my wife have the same problem. My wife wants me to light the Shabbat candles on the table. And I don't want them there because it presents questions of muksah, moving it. It's just complicated. So I like to light the candles on the shelf. So I prepare the candles on the shelf every Friday night, and every Friday night she takes them off when I go to Bet Knesset, the synagogue, and she lights them on the table. And I hate it. This Friday night I said, I've had enough. I said, if you light the candles on the table, I'm not going to make Kiddush, and I'm not going to be home for the meal. You're on your own. I went to Bet Knesset, the synagogue, I came back, I walked in, candles on the table. I went crazy, shouting, screaming. I said, no Kiddush, no Suda, and I walked out. And I was walking around, and I heard some singing. And I said, let me stop and over. Maybe this place will calm me down. I've never been in this place before. I never met this rabbi before. And as I walked in, this rabbi called me over, and he whispered in my ear, without me saying a word. Candles are lit for one reason. Shalom bayit. It's important to light candles in order to bring shalom bayit. Otherwise, there's no point having candles. And I realized he was talking to me, and somehow he knew what I was going through, or maybe he didn't. But I'm running home right now to make peace with my wife. So this man told this story on the radio, and this rabbi sat in the back seat. By the Rashi tells us, one of the reasons we have light candles, that's why you should put candles near where you're eating, it's the halacha. So you should get benefit from the candles. Unlike Hanukkah candles, you cannot get benefit from, because they're so holy. Shabbat candles you should light and actually use the light a little bit next to your meal. You should light where you're eating, ideally. It's not the end of the story. This rabbi travels to the place he was going to give class to. And he's giving this class, and a woman approaches him at the end. He said, I have a question. Every Friday night, I get into a big fight with my husband. He wants the candles on the shelf next to the table and I want the candles on the table. I like the look, and the light is better over there. And the rabbi's like, oh my God. This rabbi who's now dead, Mordechai, he's still alive. And he's sending me a message. So he says to the woman, I'm not sure of the answer to your question. It's not such an easy question to answer. But let me tell you, one thing I do know, because I heard in the name of Rav Moshe Mordechai of Lelov, that Shabbat candles are for Shalom Bayit, for peace in your home. And that takes precedence over everything. So whatever you decide, make sure you have Shalom Bayit. Is that unbelievable? First of all, this Rebbe knew. By the way, many times, I'll tell you this, people said, I gave the story over the first time 2 nights ago. And so I said, are you telling me this rabbi was psychic? I'm like, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Sometimes Hashem puts things into our mouths without us even realizing the implications for other people. How many times have I given a class? Countless times. Where someone said to me, I was thinking about what you were talking about, and you said exactly what is going on in my life right now. I'm not a prophet. If I was, I'd be charging a lot more for this talk. All right, I'm not a psychic, but Hashem allows certain things to come out of certain people at certain times. It may not be a rabbi. It could be a friend. It could be a child. It could be something you're watching and saying like, that's exactly what I needed to hear right now. But the hashgacha, even leaving him out of the picture, let's say he wasn't aware, he just felt he had to say this to this man, for whatever reason. But then Hashem sometimes will sort you out and give you advice, and will line up a whole bunch of other things and put you in the right place at the right thing at the right time for the right person. By the way, when that happens, and it's going to happen, I'm sure it's happened to you at least once in your life, you know you're in the right groove. It's a sign from Hashem that you're being led in the right way. Hashem's got your back. You got the wind in your sails. So it's important to look out for those things and acknowledge them when you hear them.
Are we allowed to ask for signs?
No. No, you should not ask for signs.
We believe in signs.
Yes, retroactively. Let me explain what I mean. And let's bring it back to dating. You can't say, if this is the person I'm going to marry, give me a sign. because maybe you'll get a sign, and maybe the sign is you shouldn't get married. I had a girl, I told the story as well recently, it's in my book actually. I had a girl who was dating a guy who she should not have been dating and got dated way too long, and then his name was Mike, and whatever, eventually we spoke and she broke up with him, which was her decision, but it was the right decision, which I coaxed her into. And I said, you know what, you need to go away, take a break, go to Israel, go study, take a few weeks off, you know. So she went, I think it's on a birthright or some trip, went to Neve, whatever it was. And she calls me, it was very early in the morning. I remember like ridiculously early. She calls me up when I used to actually leave my phone on in the old days. Now it's just on vibrate. Anyway, she calls me up. She says, Rabbi, I got to tell you the most amazing thing. It's a sign. I was walking around Jerusalem and I was thinking about Mike and I stopped somewhere and I looked up and there was a sign. No, literally, a sign. And it said, Mike's Place. And that was a sign that I'm actually meant to be with him. And I said, it is a sign. And I'm pleased you noticed it. And the sign is that you're still not over him and you need more work to get him out of your head. That's what I said to her. I was actually married to someone else, she was very happy. But that was the sign. So you start looking for signs, you know what I'm saying, and asking for them. It's very difficult to read them and understand them. After the fact. So you can say, oh, I'm dating a guy and he's got the same dog's name as me and we went on vacation around the same time and we have the same, you know, love of the same actor. It's a sign. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't go forward with that. When you're under the chuppah, you can look back at all the coincidences that led you together. Then you can do it. Retroactively, lemafrei, as we say in Hebrew, it works. Then you go back, oh, it's amazing, right? And his mother is like my mother, they're both annoying, and everything's bad, and it's like amazing. Backwards you go, you can't go forwards.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
So when you're like praying to Hashem and asking for clarity or to lead you on the right path, how do you know? Like
You don't. You ask for clarity. As you answer your own question. You ask Hashem, if this is the person I'm going to be with, it should be quick, easy, and simple, God willing. Let it be your will. You should not pray, I hope that guy marries me. Not your ask. You should, if this is meant to be Hashem, let it happen quickly, easily, and with a lot of parnasa. I'm 21 years and I'm still asking for the same stuff. If somebody hears me like, oh, here he comes again. Maybe my long list of requests of God. All right, here we go again. Hajjaf again, asking for more stuff. All right, too right I am. Don't ask, I may not get. And Hashem can afford everything. He's Koneh HaKol. He owns everything. Who better to ask? Don't be shy to ask God for anything. Don't limit yourself. Can you ask for miracles? That's already something else. Al tismoch al hanes. You can't rely upon miracles. But if it's in the realm of possibility, like if you take an exam and the envelope comes and the results are in the envelope, you can't pray that you get a good result. It's already there. That's already a miracle. When you take the exam, you can pray, hope the person who grades this, I hope, Rabbi Hadjioff is going to be nice and he's grading my paper. All right? And he should have rachmanut and not in a bad mood. My kids are annoying me. X. Okay. No. Check. I said it before, I'll say it again. The longest prayer in the Torah is Eliezer asking to find a shidduch for Yitzchak. He doesn't say Meshim, he said Hashem, guide me to find the right person for my servant. That is the longest prayer in the Torah. Can't be coincidence, can it? Right? The longest prayer in the entire Torah is someone trying to find a shidduch for somebody else. Obviously, prayer and shidduchim are deeply connected. Deeply. Talking to a girl last night, actually. A older single, she's not so old, but she's older single. And we were talking, and she said, what can I do? And I was mentioning websites and finding people, the usual, try to give some kind of chizuk and some kind of, but I said, by the way, don't forget to pray. She says, I don't pray. I'm like, you should add it. She's like, but I don't even know what to say. I'm like, then say that. That's also pray, Hashem, I don't know what to say. Pretty good, that. It's not a bad tefillah to have. If my kids say, I don't know how to apologize, I'm like, good enough. It's better apology than I'm sorry, so you have some money. Not bad. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? Okay. We'll stop over there. Thank you all so much for coming out. I'm enjoying these sessions very much.
Sarah, I have another question.
I'm not surprised.
So when it comes to prayer, some people go through spiritual droughts. So what if
Oh, people that what that means? What's a spiritual drought?
sometimes? No, I was just saying how some people sometimes go through they just don't feel as connected to Hashem.
Oh yes.
So I just say it's
Been there.
Yeah. So
Yep.
let's say you're going through that phase in your life and praying becomes more of a chore. Should you still pray?
1,000%.
Okay.
As one of my rabbis once said to me many years ago, he said, it could be that your tefillot at that time are even considered greater. Because when you're all very spiritual and I love Hashem, things are great, Hashem's like, okay, of course you're going to talk to me. But when things are tough and you don't want to talk to Hashem and you have to force yourself, and sometimes you just check in, check out. Yeah. Could be those tefillot are considered even greater and holier than the ones we are. There are chazals that say this. Then when you're feeling all spiritual, right, at the kotel, right, and you're bouncing around and loving Hashem and crying and all the rest of it, that's also good. But it could be that your tefillot, when actually you don't really want to be there, mean a lot more. When my kids do something voluntarily, which I know they don't want to do, I appreciate it more. More chance of them getting what they need. Yeah? Yeah. And it could be that your tefillah is shorter over there, but it's never quantity, it's always quality. Always quality.
So what if the quality is bad because you feel it?
That's a good quality. I'm saying it's a good quality to say, I don't want to be doing this, but this is what I need to do. And tell Hashem that. Say, Hashem, I don't want to be here right now. For real. That's a prayer. We need to re-understand, reinvent what tefillah is. It's not just reading stuff. Yeah.
So for someone who does have doubts, what would you say is a good path towards coming to a place where you feel like you pray Hashem?
If a person does have doubts of what?
In their prayer.
Oh, they just say it. You just do it. And eventually you do it, you start Lo Lishma and it becomes Lishma. Just talk. I personally people just talk to Hashem. Start them off, just talk to Hashem a few minutes a day. Talk to Hashem. And if you're embarrassed to do it in public, do it privately. No one's going to know. And so I find this very unusual. I'm in trouble right now. I'm suffering with relationships, family, everyone's got something. Just talk to Hashem. And you build up. It's a skill. It's an avodah. The Rambam calls it that. That's what's called an avodat halev. It's called service because it's hard work, the Rambam says. Avodah shebelev. Service of the heart. Avodah, by the way, is different from malacha. Malacha is creative work. Tefillah is avodah. Hard work. The difference is hard. Avadim hayinu. The power of Misraim. We were avadim. On Shabbat, you could do avodah. You cannot do malacha unless the malacha is also avodah. But avodah means hard work. I'm saying I'm not a great prayer, unfortunately. I wish I was. I'm always losing focus. I'm in my head on vacation. I just sometimes, it's not easy for me. That's the honest truth. I look at people, I'm like, oh, I wish I could pray like that. You know those big swayers, I wish I could do that, There's room for improvement.
I have a question back to the thing we were talking about, parents, not related to relationships, but how do you, and we mentioned that you can go against your parents in terms of relationships, and then paruna saba.
Not always suggested, but you are permitted to do it, yes.
So when, let's say you want to do something, it's like kind of small, like go on vacation or do these little things, and your parents are constantly saying no. How do you know when it is okay to go against them and when they're just being like overbearing?
There is no general answer to that question. It really does depend. If you are, the Gemara says, if you are dependent upon your parents for your parnasah, they support you, then you still eat at their shulchan, is how the Gemara, if I remember correctly, defines it, then you need to listen to them. But if they try to control your life abusively, then you're allowed to defy them in order to get what you need. So if you have parents who are like, you cannot go on vacation and you can't go away, but I need this, then you may be permitted to do it. Yeah. Things that involve them is different. Then you have to honor them and their needs. But contradicting them, which I did today actually with my mother. Someone started up, I got a whole bunch of emails today because someone copied my mother's Facebook account. Facebook's a big thing for my mother. You know, they copy accounts, they do fake accounts, you know what I'm talking about? So I was trying to explain to her, because, you know, God bless her, she's not so tech savvy. I was trying to explain to her. She's like, how do I get rid of the other account? I said, it's not good, but it's my account, it's got my name on it. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't create it. It's not your account. It's like, I don't understand. It's got my name on it, my photo. So it's my account. I'm like, no, someone stole your identity. I'm like, don't worry, I already reported it. Don't worry, it should. And all I'm thinking, you can't contradict what she's saying, right? But you try to explain to her. I'm like, no, Mom, it doesn't work that way. She's like, I have 2 accounts. Hey, you have 1 account. Well, which one's mine? I'm like, well, I'm going to go crazy over here. I'm not going my mind. I'm going. God bless.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, like,
About Facebook? Please don't ask me.
I don't have it, so I don't have any.
Oh, thank God.
But
Wow.
okay, so with like, I can see why with a spouse it would be different, but like with a parent, you might, I don't want to say abusive because I feel like that's also an extreme version that not necessarily like everyone goes through, but like, let's say you have a parent who's like more on like the controlling side.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a way of like, is there anything you can do to change
If it's
that?
affecting your emotional growth and your spiritual growth, then you can protect yourself. You cannot. That story of Dan Ben Sina doesn't mean he has to follow his parents around and listen to their insanity. He was respectable and respectful, but he knew they were crazy. He wasn't delusional.
Do you think that there's any opportunity?
One of my spiritual advisors, grew up in an extremely abusive home. And he knows his mother's nuts. He's not angry with her. He's now accepted upon himself that that's who she is. And that is the parents that Hashem decided that I should have. But that, does he listen to every insane thing his mother tells him his father died? His mother tells him to do? Absolutely not. You go crazy. So you're allowed to create boundaries in order to keep your emotional health.
Do you think that, like, in creating boundaries, it would help that person, or only like the person? who's,
You
like,
create boundaries to help yourself. If they benefit from it, good for them. Most of the time it drives them crazy. But you're entitled to take care of your emotional health. You're entitled to take care of your physical health and your emotional health.
Is there anything you would recommend for trying to help the person? who's
No,
controlling?
don't even try. It's their problem.
What-
Don't even try. Don't waste your time. Take care of yourself. Protect yourself.
What if it comes to a point where they're like angry with you?
Okay. You can't respond. I hear. You should be. My friend said to me, I'm at peace with my parents. My parents were crazy. That's just who they are. Or as he called my mother, she was special. She says, which is his way of saying she's completely bonkers. And I'm saying, but that's what it is. There's a reason why psychologists say first 5 years of your life really establishes who you are and your personality. It comes from your parents. Believe me, every therapy session people sit in, tell about your parents. There's a reason why. Doesn't mean you're stuck with it. People can change. And for some people, may need more. Some people have wonderful parents who are very giving. And by the way, I've seen people come from great families who are completely nuts. I see people who come from the most insane families. You see in the Torah, Rivka came from a crazy family, and she was able to overcome it. Avraham Avinu's father was Oved Avodah Zarah. We're not shy to say it. He wasn't a big tzaddik. The great Abraham's father was one of the, was in the idol business. Don't try to change them. You're wasting your time. All right, guys. This was awesome. Thank you so much. See you all, God willing, next week.